It all began with a bark. Not just any bark, but one that shattered the quiet like a sudden clap of thunder, transforming a sleepy Wednesday morning into an unforgettable moment. 1 minute, Mrs. Carroll's 7th grade art class was a mix of watercolor paints and lively chatter. The next, a German shepherd named Dante lunged toward a painting on the far wall, teeth bared, growling fiercely as the sound echoed through the room like gunshots. At first, everyone thought he had lost control. The students screamed. Paint cups toppled, brushes fell to the floor, and standing frozen in the middle of it all was Officer Daniels, Dante's handler, eyes fixed on his dog, unsure whether to hold him back or let him act. That painting wasn't just a piece of art. Dante sensed something. What happened next would reveal a secret deeper than anyone at Lincoln Middle School had ever imagined. But let's take a step back. The school had recently launched a pilot program pairing local police officers and K-9 units with schools as part of a new safety initiative following a string of incidents in nearby districts. Dante, a retired bomb-sniffing dog with an impeccable record, was assigned to Lincoln to provide security alongside the PAWS program. Most students adored him. They'd pet Dante in the hallways, throw tennis balls in the courtyard, and compete to see who could get him to perform tricks during lunch. He was their furry hero. Until the day he growled at that painting. The painting had always hung high on the east wall of room 114. It was nearly floor to ceiling, dark and somber, showing an American flag torn by the wind with soldiers' shadows stretching across a desolate landscape. It unsettled most students, but Mrs. Carroll, a gentle-voiced art teacher with a heavy heart, insisted it was important. "It's a piece of history," she told them. No one questioned it, until Dante did. It happened just 10 minutes into class, Mrs. Carroll recalled. As students dipped brushes into trays and sketched childhood memories, Dante, usually resting quietly near Officer Daniels at the back, suddenly stood up. Then, slow and deliberate, he moved toward the painting. At first, Daniels thought maybe Dante was sniffing leftover food, or a squirrel had gotten inside. But then the growl began, low, threatening, growing louder. "Dante, no," Daniels whispered, rising from his seat. "Too late," Dante lunged. He snapped at the bottom edge of the painting, clamping his jaws and tearing the canvas like fabric under a knife. A collective gasp filled the room. The teacher screamed. Kids dove under desks. Behind the torn artwork was a handle, a small, rusted metal handle embedded in what appeared to be part of the wall, but not drywall. Steel, like a hidden panel. Daniels rushed forward, pulled Dante back by his harness, and stared at the exposed metal. The handle was real. The wall was not what it seemed. "Get Principal Harding," he ordered a nearby student. The classroom emptied quickly after that. The hallway buzzed with confused whispers spreading like wildfire. Had the dog gone crazy? Was there a gas leak? Drugs? A bomb? Only Officer Daniels remained, standing guard over the torn canvas and the mysterious handle. Mrs. Carroll sat at her desk, visibly shaken, fingers trembling as she tried to process what had just happened. "I didn't know that was there," she kept repeating. "That painting's been in my family since I was a child. My father gave it to me." Daniels mostly believed her, but Dante didn't lie. In the middle of the chaos, the PA system crackled to life. "All classes must remain in lockdown until further notice. This is not a drill." Whatever lay behind that wall was far more than just a storage closet. If stories like this move you, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Heroes for Animals, where real-life animals become the unexpected heroes we never knew we needed. You won't want to miss what Dante uncovers next. About an hour later, the bomb squad arrived. They carefully scanned the room, reviewed Dante's behavior logs, and used magnetic tools and handheld scanners to pry open the mysterious handle. With a creak and a groan, the hidden door swung open, releasing a cold rush of air into the classroom. Behind the wall was a small room, roughly the size of a walk-in closet. Inside, old file cabinets, rusted lockers, a vintage reel-to-reel tape recorder, and stacks of what appeared to be archived documents filled the space. There were no explosives or drugs, but the stale, untouched air, like something frozen in time, made everyone uneasy. Daniels glanced at Dante. The dog sat quietly now, tail still, eyes fixed on the room like a vigilant soldier. Whatever this was, it was bigger than just a dog reacting to old paint. This was far from over. Outside room 114, the hallway buzzed with whispers as the district superintendent arrived, accompanied by two plainclothes investigators from the State Department of Education. No one mentioned a cover-up, but their avoidance of eye contact told Officer Daniels they were already considering it. Inside the classroom, the atmosphere grew heavier, like the calm before a storm. The torn canvas lay crumpled on the floor beside Mrs. Carroll's easel, its patriotic image shredded. Dante sat at the threshold of the hidden room, perfectly still, as if guarding a sacred secret. Principal Harding returned, flashlight in hand, wearing a forced smile. "We're going to keep this quiet for now. No need to alarm parents. We'll say the dog detected mold or a rodent problem." Daniels said nothing. He crouched down and shone his own light into the opening. The space wasn't just a hollow cavity. It extended about 6 feet inward. The floor was covered in old 70s-style linoleum, and a faint chemical scent lingered, antiseptic and sterile, like an abandoned hospital wing. "Ever seen anything like this?" Daniels asked one of the bomb squad members. "Nope," the man replied. "But I'll tell you this, Dante didn't react to explosives. Whatever made him attack this wall wasn't about a bomb. That's when they opened the first file cabinet. Inside were dozens of folders, some labeled with student names, others marked with cryptic codes. Project TS, Unit 14, Debrief Echo documents, all stamped with red ink reading Confidential and Department of Defense. Daniels stepped back, stunned. "This doesn't add up," Harding said, his voice wavering. "This is a middle school, but it wasn't always." According to old city records Daniels pulled up on his tablet, Lincoln Middle had once been an Air Force administrative building during the Cold War. The school bought the property in 1983 and renovated it, but parts of the original structure had never been torn down. Someone had sealed off a room and hidden it behind a painting, and for over 30 years no one had noticed until Dante. "Call in the archivist," Daniels said. "We need to decode these files, and someone needs to speak with Mrs. Carroll again." Down the hall, Mrs. Carroll sat in the nurse's office, sipping water from a paper cup, visibly shaken. When Daniels entered, she looked up with tear-filled eyes. "I didn't know," she said. "I swear, officer, that painting was given to me by my father when I graduated college. He was stationed somewhere in Europe during the 70s. He never talked about his job, just said art was his way of remembering without words." Daniels sat beside her. "Do you know where he got the painting?" "No, only that he said it was his last mission." A long silence followed. Then Mrs. Carroll said something that stayed with Daniels all day. "He once told me, 'Some truths are better painted than spoken.' I didn't understand what he meant. Maybe now I do." Back in room 114, one of the investigators called Daniels over. "You'll want to see this." Inside a folder marked Echo Documents, they discovered a hand-drawn map, faintly colored and worn. It depicted the school grounds, but beneath the surface, there was a second set of markings: tunnels, rooms, and secret access points that no member of the school board had ever been informed about. Even more unsettling, the map showed one of the tunnel exits leading directly to the local power plant. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" the investigator asked. "Yeah," Daniels replied. "This isn't just storage. This place was designed for something operational." At that moment, Dante growled again, low and barely audible but enough to draw everyone's attention. This time, he wasn't focused on the file cabinet. His gaze was fixed on the floor. Daniels followed his eyes. Something about the linoleum looked off, an uneven patch, a faint discoloration near the far wall. He knelt down, brushed away a thin layer of dust, and uncovered what appeared to be a seam. "Hand me the crowbar." The team pried open the panel, revealing a ladder descending into darkness. Everyone in the room froze. "This keeps going?" Harding whispered. "Looks like it," Daniels said. "Get the flashlight." "I'm going down." He paused at the edge, glanced at Dante, then back at the team. "And he's coming with me." They climbed down carefully. The ladder creaked but held firm. The air grew colder with every step. At the bottom was another chamber, smaller, darker, but clearly built to last. Broken monitors, damaged switches, and shelves lined with reels of magnetic tape filled the space. Daniels activated his body cam. One tape box was labeled Subject 9, Initiation Protocol, 1975. Beneath that, in faded ink, was the name Leighton Cole H. Carroll. Daniels' breath caught. That was Mrs. Carroll's father. Whatever this room had been used for, it wasn't just government secrets, it was personal. They didn't play the tape, not yet. They'd need special equipment. But Daniels felt they had just stepped into a story that had been waiting decades to be uncovered. And Dante, the dog who had barked at a painting, was the first to listen. The next morning, the school was eerily quiet. Not the usual sleepy shuffle of kids into homeroom or teachers sipping lukewarm coffee while reviewing lesson plans, but a silence like the building itself was holding its breath. Room 114 was locked down, guarded by 2 sheriff's deputies. Yellow caution tape stretched across the doorway like a warning from the past. Do not enter. Officer Daniels barely slept. He spent most of the night watching. Dante paced the living room of Daniels' apartment, ears perked, tail low, something heavy weighing on him. Daniels had seen this behavior before. When they were in the field, it usually meant the job wasn't finished. Neither of them could shake what they'd uncovered. Now they had a box of tapes. One in particular kept spinning in Daniels' mind. Subject 09, Initiation Protocol 1975, marked with Mrs. Carroll's father's name. The school district had already called in a federal historical forensics team. A mobile audio lab was expected by noon, but Daniels didn't want to wait. At 7:12 a.m., he stood outside the only place in town that might still have a working reel-to-reel player, Miller's Vinyl and Audio, a dusty little shop 3 blocks from downtown. Wes Miller, a Vietnam veteran who owned the store, opened early just for Daniels. "You're lucky I never throw anything away," Wes said, patting the ancient silver machine like it was a prized classic car. "What are we listening to?" Daniels asked, hesitating. Something that had been hidden for nearly 50 years. Daniels wasn't even sure it was legal. Wes gave him a knowing smile. "Son, I've seen worse." Hit play. The machine whirred to life with a few crackles. Then a voice came through, gravelly, clipped, unmistakably military. "This is Leighton Cole Harold Carroll. Subject 09 has completed primary adjustment. Cognitive retention exceeds expected thresholds. Conditioning has taken effect." A pause. "Today we begin the integration phase. If successful, Subject 09 will be the first viable candidate for permanent embedded memory suppression. Objective: long-term dissociation from operative history." Daniels leaned back, absorbing the words. "Embedded memory suppression," another voice followed, young, shaky. "I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go home. Please, can I speak to my father?" "Proceed with cycle reset," the colonel's voice snapped. The recording cut off abruptly, replaced by static hiss. Daniels turned to Wes. "Can you make a copy?" Wes nodded solemnly. "On it." As the tape spun again, Daniels stepped outside and called Principal Harding. "We've got more than Cold War relics here," he said. "This was a human experiment, and if I'm right, Subject 09 might have been a child." Harding's voice trembled. "What? What does that mean for us?" "It means," Daniels replied, "someone used this building as a testing ground, and the person who painted that mural might have been either covering it up or trying to expose it." By the time Daniels returned to the school, a mobile FBI lab had arrived and parked near the faculty lot. Technicians set up scanners, dusted the room for fingerprints, and began mapping the hidden chamber and tunnel system. But one thing stood out. They couldn't find any official record of Subject 09. No birth date, no social security number, no real identity. However, they did find something else. In the drawer of an old desk in the underground room, buried beneath dust and forgotten papers, was a small silver locket. Inside was a black and white photo of a young girl, maybe 10 years old, and a man in military uniform. Daniels brought the locket to Mrs. Carroll. When she opened it, her hand flew to her mouth. "That's me," she whispered. "And that's my father. I remember this photo. I lost it when I was a child." Daniel's heart raced. "Ma'am, we think you might have been in that room. Subject 09 might have been you." Silence. She sat down slowly, trying to steady her breath. "That can't be. I remember growing up overseas. I remember art school and my mom's apartment in Germany. I remember." But her voice trailed off as fragments of memory, faded images of fluorescent lights, a man with a clipboard, cold tiled floors, began to resurface. Her hands trembled. "I always had nightmares about being locked underground," she said, "but I thought it was just childhood fear. Are you telling me my own father did this to me?" Daniels didn't answer, but the look in his eyes said enough. Meanwhile, Dante had taken up his post at the edge of the classroom again. He wasn't barking now, just standing watch over the hallway like a guardian, as if waiting for someone or something to return. That night, Daniels walked the tunnels again, this time with the FBI. They uncovered 3 more hidden compartments, each filled with similar contents: reel-to-reel tapes, metal file boxes, and photos of unnamed children. It was a chapter of American history that had been erased, or at least attempted to be. The story broke 3 days later, making national headlines: secret Cold War experiments discovered in middle school. Parents were outraged. Protesters gathered outside the school gates. The Department of Education launched an internal investigation. But amid the chaos, one image captured the hearts of millions: a photo of K9 Dante standing tall in front of the torn painting, the American flag still visible behind him. Eyes locked forward, he hadn't just uncovered a mystery, he had revealed the truth. And he did it not with a weapon, nor with words, but through the instincts only a dog could trust. The school remained closed the following Monday. Instead of buses dropping off students, news vans lined the curb. The flag outside flew at half-mast, not for a person but for the memory of what had been hidden beneath the art room floor all these years. Parents demanded answers. Teachers sat in stunned silence during emergency meetings. Some requested transfers. A few quietly resigned. Back in his apartment, Officer Daniels sat at his kitchen table, sifting through documents the FBI had finally declassified. Dante lay at his feet, ears twitching at every creak of the floorboards or passing car. The file on top was labeled Operation Silent Brush, timeline 1974 to 1977. It was a code Daniels hadn't seen before, but it connected the dots he'd been piecing together for days. The mural Dante had torn wasn't just a random painting. It was a coded message. The abstract swirls of gray, layered reds, and hints of sepia weren't artistic choices. They were part of a covert military, psychological technique designed to trigger suppressed memories through visual stimuli. The very kind of visual exposure Mrs. Carroll had unknowingly stood before for nearly a decade. She hadn't just brought her father's painting to school, she had brought the key to unlocking everything he had buried. By Tuesday, the FBI's forensic team had digitized most of the tapes and documents. Daniel sat inside the mobile command center behind the school, headphones on, listening to a recording from a 1976 session. Subject 09 continues to ask for her mother. Emotional suppression protocol failed. Recommend chemical reset. Subject shows signs of visual hallucinations. Paintings becoming erratic, possibly revealing more than intended. Daniels paused the tape, jaw clenched. They had tried to erase a child's mind, but they hadn't expected her to grow up to be a teacher. And they certainly hadn't expected a dog to sniff out the one piece of her father's guilt that could break the silence. That same day, Daniels visited Mrs. Carroll. She hadn't returned to school and didn't plan to, for now. Her small cottage on the edge of town was filled with art supplies, dusty photo albums, and unopened boxes of old letters. She was painting when he arrived, not on canvas, but on the window her fingers dipped in blue, tracing childlike swirls on the glass. "I can't sleep," she said without turning around. "Every time I close my eyes, I see hallways that don't exist and faces I don't know, but somehow—" Daniel stepped closer. "You were never meant to remember, but you did. And I think you were the only one who could." She nodded slowly. "Do you think he regretted it?" "My father?" Daniels hesitated. "I think he tried to bury it by giving you the painting. I think it haunted him." Then he reached into his jacket and placed something on the table behind her. A red envelope. It had been hidden inside one of the last locked drawers found beneath the school. The handwriting on the front read, "For MC, when the world is ready." Mrs. Carroll picked it up with trembling hands. Inside was a 2-page handwritten letter. She read it silently, then aloud. "My sweet Maggie, if you're reading this, I'm already gone. I won't ask for forgiveness, I don't deserve it. They told me I'd be protecting the country, making it stronger, shielding truth from the wrong hands, but they never told me the cost. I thought I could protect you by hiding the past. But maybe the truth doesn't want to be buried. Maybe it wants to be painted. I hope one day you find the strength I never had. You always loved blue the most. Dad." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she placed the letter beside her paints. Daniels said nothing. Sometimes, silence is the loudest sound. Later that week, the school board held a public meeting. The auditorium was packed with parents, students, teachers, and local reporters. Daniels was there in uniform, Dante faithfully by his side. When the board chair took the microphone, the room fell silent. "We have decided to permanently close room 114, she announced. "The space will be sealed, and all documents will be handed over to the Federal Archives. But we understand this is not the end. It's only the beginning of a story that was never meant to be told." A student raised their hand. "Is it true that a dog discovered all of this?" Daniels glanced down at Dante. The German shepherd sat proud and composed, as noble as ever. "It's true," Daniels said, stepping forward. Dante didn't just bark at a painting. He barked at history, at memories, at pain that no one wanted to face. And somehow he knew. He always knows. The crowd responded with quiet applause, not loud or wild, but sincere and respectful. It was deeply human. Back at home, Daniels opened his laptop and typed the headline into the submission portal for Heroes for Animals. "Canine dog uncovers secret hidden in school wall." What he found changed everything. He hit publish, then turned to Dante. "Ready for what's next, partner?" Dante thumped his tail once on the floor, and somewhere in Daniel's mind, he knew the story wasn't over. 2 weeks later, the tale of Dante, the canine who uncovered a decades-old government secret hidden inside a middle school wall, had gone viral. National news networks called it the bark that broke the silence. Late-night talk shows featured it as their feel-good story of the month. For a brief moment, the town of Fairhaven, Oregon, was the center of the nation's attention. But Officer Daniels wasn't watching the news. He sat in a folding chair at the back of a makeshift FBI archive center inside a vacant library building, flipping through a second folder they had almost overlooked. Most of the original documents had been handed over to the Department of Defense, but a few stray files remained, scattered among old-school supply boxes and dusty janitorial closets no one had thought to check. This file was simply labeled Subject 10. Inside was a grainy photo of a girl, about 8 years old, with dark curls and large eyes staring straight into the camera. At the top was a number inked in 844-2010. Below, scribbled in pen, was a note. "No known relatives. Final cycle incomplete. Status: disappeared." Daniels stared at the photo for a long moment. Unlike the first subject, Mrs. Carroll, who had unknowingly lived a full life on top of her hidden past, this girl had vanished. No medical records, no school enrollment, no adoption papers, just one barely legible note on a carbon copy. Last seen near Southfield Orphanage, 1982. Dog reported disturbance. Entry denied. Case closed. A dog! It always came back to the dogs. Daniels leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, feeling the weight of it settle heavily on his chest. What had they done to these children? Were they all like Maggie Carroll, part of some twisted Cold War mind control program gone rogue? And why did dogs keep appearing in these files? Across the room, Agent Beach, the lead FBI analyst on site, approached with a new stack of tapes and a tired smile. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said. "Maybe I have," Daniels replied, holding up the photo. "Ever heard of Subject 10? Beach took the folder, scanned its contents, and exhaled slowly. "We didn't think there were more. But if this is real, she's still out there. Or was never found," Daniels added. Either way, it wasn't just Maggie. Beach sat beside him, glancing down at Dante, who lay quietly under the desk, alert as always. "Do you ever wonder if maybe these dogs remember something?" she asked, as if these dogs were trained for something beyond what we understand. Daniels glanced down at Dante and remembered their first mission together, a warehouse raid in San Jose. Dante had yanked him out of the way just in time, pulling him by the collar to avoid a falling beam. No formal training for that kind of reaction, just pure instinct, or maybe something deeper. "Let's say they do," Daniels replied. "Then the real question is, what else are we still missing?" That Friday, Mrs. Carroll returned to the school for the first time since everything happened. Not to teach. She had taken an indefinite leave, but to leave a painting. It was abstract again, but this time softer. Warm blues and whites, gentle swirls of yellow and green. It didn't hide anything or encode a secret memory. It simply invited calm. She requested it be hung in the cafeteria. "For the kids," she said, when Daniels met her afterward. She seemed lighter, not healed, no one could heal that fast, but more whole, as if speaking the truth had stopped it from festering in silence. "I've been dreaming of her," she told him without prompting. "The girl in the second file. I don't know why or how, but she appears in my dreams. She's always hiding, always scared, and there's always a dog nearby. Not Dante, a different one. A black and white border collie." Maybe Daniels felt the hairs on his arm stand up. "She might be real," he said. "We found a file on her. No records after 1982, Mrs. Carroll didn't flinch. Instead, she looked toward the edge of the field behind the school where students were playing soccer. "We should find her," she said quietly. Daniels nodded. "We will." That night, Daniels returned to his patrol route. Fairhaven was quiet again, but it didn't feel the same. Every alley, every warehouse, every abandoned house seemed different. As if history was still watching. Still waiting, Dante rode shotgun as usual. But halfway down Main Street, he sat up, ears perked. "What is it?" Daniels asked. Dante let out a low whine. They were passing the old Southfield lot, the site where the orphanage once stood. It had burned down years ago and was replaced by a strip mall that never quite took off. Daniels pulled over. Dante jumped out before the door was fully open, nose to the ground, zigzagging across the cracked pavement like he was tracking something invisible. Then he stopped, sat down, and stared at a manhole cover near the corner of the lot. Daniels approached cautiously, flashlight sweeping the area. No sounds, no movement, but etched faintly into the concrete beside the cover was something Daniels hadn't noticed before. 4U10. He knelt and ran his fingers over the marking. It wasn't a street number, it was a designation. The girl, Subject 10, had been here. And maybe, just maybe, she still was. Daniels didn't sleep that night. He filed the report, called Agent Beach, and marked the location for a full excavation. It would take time, permits, ground-penetrating radar, but something told him this wasn't over. As he poured himself a second cup of coffee at 2:43 a.m., he glanced over at Dante, who was staring out the window, his tail softly thumping against the floor. Daniels got up and walked over. Outside, on the dark street corner across from his apartment, stood a young woman wearing a hoodie barefoot. She didn't wave or move, but even from that distance, Daniels recognized the girl from the photo. Beside her was a black and white dog watching and waiting. Then, as if swallowed by the mist, they vanished. It was nearly dawn when Daniels finally stepped outside. The air was crisp, the sky a soft gray with streaks of orange beginning to break across the horizon. Dante padded quietly beside him, ears twitching at the sounds of early morning, the distant hum of traffic, the rustling wind through the old sycamores, the gentle stir of a town waking up. But Daniels wasn't thinking about breakfast, work, or the upcoming FBI debrief. His mind was on her. The barefoot girl who had disappeared the moment he looked out the window. The same face from Subject 10's file, only older now, weathered by time and memory. And standing beside her was the mysterious black and white dog. No collar, no tags, just that calm, knowing stillness, like Dante when he sensed something beyond human understanding. He hadn't dreamed it. He knew that much. And even if the street cameras showed nothing, no shadows, no movement, he believed what he had seen. By 9:00 a.m., the field team arrived at the old Southfield lot. They cordoned off the area around the manhole and set up ground-penetrating radar. Watching from his cruiser, Daniels felt that familiar tightness at the back of his neck, not quite fear, but the heavy weight of knowing the past wasn't done with them yet. 20 minutes later, the technician raised her hand. "We found a hollow space beneath the concrete," she said. About 10 feet down, roughly the size of a small room." Agent Beach nodded. "Start digging." The excavation took most of the day. Beneath layers of asphalt, soil, and reinforced steel, they uncovered a sealed chamber. No external locks or hinges, like someone never intended for it to be found again, but with enough effort, they pried it open. Inside was a small room with bare walls, rusted filing cabinets covered in mold, and painted faintly across the far wall, barely visible under years of grime, was a mural done in a child's hand. Figures of a girl, a dog, a gate, and above it, scratched in black paint, the name Eddie. "I remember now," Daniels whispered as he stepped inside, Heart pounding. On a dusty shelf he found a journal. The pages were brittle, the ink faded but still legible. They called me 10. They said I didn't have a name, but I did. I just forgot it. The dog remembered, though. He never left my side. Sometimes, even when the lights go out, I hear him. I think he's the only part of me they couldn't erase. The last page was missing, but scrawled in hurried, childlike handwriting on the inside cover were 3 words. Still watching. Still here. News of the discovery broke that very night. Headlines spread across the country once again. Second Cold War bunker found beneath Fair Haven. Possible survivor identified. But this time the town didn't erupt in panic or anger. Instead, they came together. Candlelight vigils were held at Lincoln Middle School and the Southfield lot. Former students of Mrs. Carroll shared stories online about how her classroom had always felt like a safe haven, even before anyone understood why. Artists began recreating her paintings, interpreting the blues and golds as symbols of healing. And for Daniels, a breakthrough came. A woman in Idaho who ran a rescue center for retired service dogs reached out to the FBI. She said a black and white border collie had appeared at her ranch 11 years ago, half-starved and skittish. The only name he responded to was Finn, the same name etched beneath the mural in the underground room. He was still alive. They brought Finn to Fair Haven. When Mrs. Carroll saw him, she knelt silently. The dog walked straight to her, rested his head on her knee, and closed his eyes. Dante stood nearby, tail wagging softly, as if offering a quiet salute. The town eventually transformed the school's east wing into a memorial art gallery, calling it the Room Between Walls. It didn't showcase traditional war art or academic achievements. Instead, it displayed paintings from children across the country, art that expressed pain, memory, healing, and truth. Mrs. Carroll's new piece hung at the center. It depicted 2 dogs, Dante and Finn, standing at the edge of a forest. In the background, a school, a girl's shadow, and a door finally open. Daniels never returned to regular patrol duty. He now works full-time as a community liaison officer, teaching children about safety, courage, and the importance of listening, even when the message comes from the most unexpected voices. And Dante? He became a legend, a hero without a cape, whose bark changed more lives than 1,000 speeches ever could. Sometimes, late at night, Daniel still checks that street corner. He hasn't seen the girl again, but he's certain she's out there, maybe not in body, but in memory, and just as real. And when he closes his eyes, he always hears the same thing, a bark, a scratch, and a whisper that says, "Remember, life has a strange way of revealing what we try hardest to bury. Sometimes it takes decades, sometimes it takes a dog. So let me ask you this, dear viewer. What hidden part of your story is still waiting to be heard? And will you be brave enough to listen?